I am pleased to welcome on stage Richard Cani, Director Transport Strategy and Policy from London. Richard is responsible for the overall development of transport strategy and planning within the Transport of London Group, including implementation of the Mayor's transport strategy and sub-regional transport plan for London. Richard has worked for the LFL Group for over 10 years and had responsibility for major projects, including the expansion of the Docklands Light Railway and the Emirates Airline cable car. Richard is a chartered town planner and transport planner who takes an integrated approach to the long-term planning of London's transport network, including spatial planning, urban design, and transport planning issues. Richard has previously worked for Arup and the Prince Foundation. Please, Richard, welcome on stage.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here to talk about what's happening in London, and I think this is a subject you may have already had some comment on already over the past few days. So just before I start, just to explain what's happening in the UK at the moment, we are at a critical decision point about how we plan our future aviation capacity. We have a fragmented structure in the UK. We have the government that sets the overall policy for where airport expansion should take place. We have the Civil Aviation Authority as the regulator, and we have the private sector who has been responsible for delivery of airport capacity. Now, I work for the Mayor of London. The Mayor has no direct remit in aviation at all, but his responsibility is London's future success and London's future growth. And this Mayor believes that London's connections to the rest of the world are absolutely key to London's future economic success. So just looking back in time, as a small island nation, connectivity with the rest of the world has been key to the development of London as a global city. You can see the picture there of Heathrow Airport, originally a military airport, opened for commercial operations in 1946. And even in the 1960s, it was the busiest airport in the world with just 8 million passengers a year. And since then, Heathrow has been the primary international gateway to London and the UK. Since then, we've seen an expansion of airport capacity around London and the South East. Even as Heathrow prospered in the 1960s, Gatwick was being developed and Stansted was on the way. And London has taken a historic turn in its path and decided on multiple unlinked airports rather than developing a large single hub. Now we have 6 airports with the prefix London, more than any other city in the world. This chart shows the expansion of that capacity, where you can see the purple dots, where we've had new terminal capacity, and the green line, where we've added new runways. And you can see there that the development of terminal capacity has far outstripped the development of runway capacity, with the last major expansion of runway capacity over 25 years ago. Now, this global connectivity that London has benefited London's economy. London receives more foreign direct investment than any other European city, responsible in 2010-11 for over 90,000 jobs. London's home to more European headquarters than any other city in Europe, and attracts employees and companies from all over the world. But also London, it really is a global city. More than 233 languages are spoken in London, and over a third of its residents were born outside the UK. And you can see there in the graph in 2001 and in red and 2011 in blue. So you can see over that relatively short period, London has become an even more global city, and that has significant implications for demand for aviation and connections with the rest of the world. So in terms of the current situation, London's 6 airports accommodate more passengers than any other city in the world. However, Heathrow is our only hub airport. It's full, with 99% utilisation and rising, with very little resilience to deal with poor weather and unexpected events. Gatwick Airport is filling up, the busiest single runway airport in the world, with 76 utilisation and rising. But Stansted Airport, for example, is relatively empty, only 39% utilisation, and has been falling. So we believe this highlights the significance of the hub airport. London has a lot of capacity across its 6 airports, but the capacity is configured in the wrong way to attract the global connections that London needs for the future. But also, London as a city is growing. It's growing at its fastest rate since the Second World War. So what this graph shows is the population since 1961 in blue. You can see, like many cities in Western Europe, it's fallen through to the 1980s, and then since then it's been steadily rising. And by 2040, the official projections show that London will have more than 10 million people. Now, that population is also changing as well. It's becoming a more international, a more diverse city. And again, that population increase, but also the diversity of its population, is fueling an increase in demand for travel to the rest of the world. The UK government has reviewed its demand forecasts for aviation. This highlights that UK-wide demand will increase from around 230 million passengers a year to 320 by 2030 and 480 by 2050. And the graph there shows the current passenger throughput at Heathrow in a flat line, but that shows the unconstrained demand for growth at Heathrow if the capacity were available. Now, clearly that capacity isn't available, and the current policy position of the government is that excess demand will move to other airports in London and the UK. But the Mayor's fear is it won't move to other London airports, it will move out of the UK to other European hubs like Frankfurt and Schiphol, thus impacting on the UK connectivity with the rest of the world. We've already seen a reduction in the total destinations served from Heathrow. So this data here shows Heathrow in black compared to other European hubs in terms of total destinations served. And you can see that other European hubs like Schiphol, like Frankfurt and Charles de Gaulle already serve more destinations than London Heathrow. Because of the capacity constraints at Heathrow, airlines have concentrated on the established lucrative corridors such as New York, Hong Kong, where yes, we do have unrivaled levels of connectivity and frequency compared to other European hubs. But in those emerging markets, Heathrow is falling behind. You can see there the number of seats from Heathrow to mainland Chinese destinations in 2011 compared to other European hubs. And already we're providing just under half of the capacity that Paris has to those Chinese cities. So the Mayor has a vision for London. Our Mayor, Boris Johnson, some of you may recognise his picture. You may have been familiar what he said already about airports. But he has a vision for London to be the best big city in the world, to be the capital of business and have the most competitive business environment in the world. And to achieve this, he firmly believes that London has to be connected to the rest of the world. So for the Mayor, it's about connectivity. It's about how we can provide connections of the right level of frequency at the right time of the day to other major global cities. What this map shows here is the current network of global connections to different regions of the world. So in the red box, that shows the number of destinations in the region that are served from London. In blue, it's the weekly frequency, and in green, that's the percentage of Heathrow's flights to the region. So yes, you would expect Western Europe to accommodate a large proportion of Heathrow flights, just under 50%. North America accommodates 19% of Heathrow's flights, with just under 900 services a week to 36 different destinations. That's the best level of connectivity from any European hub to North America. But look at South America, 3 destinations served, 34 services a week. Look at Central Asia, 4 destinations served, 12 services a week. And Northeast Asia, 7 destinations served, and just over 140 services a week. And these are the parts of the world that are growing fastest that London will need to be connected to. The next graph shows changes in connectivity to destinations served at Heathrow between 2002 and 2011. The green are new destinations that have been added, And the red are where destinations have had a reduction in frequency or they've been lost altogether. And this is really highlighting the capacity constraints we have at Heathrow, where because we're operating at 98%, it's difficult to add new destinations without taking something away. So if we want to provide a new connection from Heathrow, it's generally the expense of a destination served elsewhere. So one in, one out. And then if you look forward and look at the rest of the world and look at the change in their economies to 2050, and those countries that have the largest GDP growth are those countries that increasingly London will need to be connected to, in the same way it's connected at the moment to North America, to the Middle East, to parts of Southeast Asia. It will need connections to those countries like Vietnam, Nigeria, Argentina, and Brazil. And if you look at the fastest growing cities up to 2025 in terms of GDP growth, you can see the cluster there in red around South Asia and China. And they are the cities that if London's to attract investment, to attract those international headquarters, it needs to have connections to. And just taking that list, this is the current frequency from London to those cities. You can see Shanghai, 17 services a week, Beijing, 14, New York, fantastic, 191. But look at those other Chinese cities and other cities that are having the greatest growth over the next 20 years. Very low levels of service frequency. And because of the capacity constraints at Heathrow, it's difficult for airlines to provide those services without reducing services elsewhere. So we have a key decision to make in the UK. Whatever the rest of the world thinks, it naturally matters to the Mayor of London and to Londoners that London should continue to feature on the world stage. The UK government has set up a commission to consider these things. It will report in 2015, in 2 years' time. Key question is to continue with the policy of building up disconnected airports, drawing mainly on the origin-destination market, or make a historic decision to invest in a new hub airport with 4 runways to start and room to grow. Could we continue with multiple airports? We have 6 at the moment. London's home to 8 million people, growing to 10. Many are relatively well off, natural aviation consumers, and this adds to one of the strongest underlying origin-destination markets in the world. But this reliance on O's and D's leaves us in a suboptimal position if we ignore the importance of transfer traffic in supporting flights and services to new destinations. If our objective is to maximize connectivity between London and the rest of the world, we need a hub that can deliver this. It has to be a hub. Many of you in the room will understand this better than I do. Transfer traffic makes viable a wider range of routes with higher frequencies of flights. Even with a very strong O&D market, which London has, it still helps to add transfer traffic on top. If you look at those services from Heathrow in the box, you can see the proportion of passengers on those flights that are transfer passengers. Hyderabad, 80%, Chennai, 72%, Mexico City, 61%, Montreal, 56%. Without transfers from other parts of Europe, other parts of the world, other parts of the UK, those flights would not be viable from Heathrow. And if those flights weren't happening, London would lose its connectivity with those important cities around the world. So why not just expand Heathrow? It's our existing hub. It's the noisiest airport in the world. It's responsible for 28% of all the people in Europe affected by aircraft noise, just under 800,000 people. It's a highly constrained site. When the site was chosen in 1946, it was on the edge of London. It was a village. It was a rural area. It's now contained within London's urban area, within the urban boundary. It has more passengers than Paris Charles de Gaulle, but it's half the size. It's hemmed in by motorways, railway lines, and existing settlements. It's already operating in a significant stress. 99% means zero resilience for coping with bad weather, for example. And we do sometimes have bad weather in the UK. And look at the number of people exposed to noise. So taking a EC level of acceptable noise levels for airports, 55 dB LDN. Look at Heathrow compared to Frankfurt, Paris, and Amsterdam. so significant people within the city affected by unacceptable levels of noise. So what the Mayor of London would like to do is to identify a new site for a hub airport, where we can develop a 4-runway hub to the east of London, either in the Thames estuary or the site of London Stansted Airport. This would allow us to compete with Europe and the rest of the world, but more significantly, it would be the anchor for a major new growth zone supporting the expansion and growth of London to the east. The east of London has always been poorer than the west. This is where the largest sites for development are. This is where the Olympics took place to start to kickstart that regeneration. And an airport at the eastern end of that growth corridor would be a major stimulus to the whole UK economy, a chance to be a world city that is world class. But it wouldn't just be about an airport. Just looking what's happened in Dubai, we already have the Dubai Ports World development on the Thames. We've got major areas for growth, for new housing, for new employment. This is where London's high-speed rail network connects us with the rest of Europe. So we have an opportunity to the east of London to develop a whole new growth zone that can help us deliver the growth that London needs for the next 50 years. But how can we make it happen? It can only happen with support politically. The UK government is absolutely key. The Mayor is not part of the UK government, he's the Mayor of London. What he wants to do is influence and lobby the government to make the right decision. But it's also, we need support from industry. We recognise it's not necessarily in the interests of incumbents to move to a new hub. We have Heathrow Airport to think about and the airlines. But clearly, with our hub airport operating at 99% capacity, doing nothing is not an option. What is better for airlines? An 8-year wait to get into Heathrow, or the chance for a number of slots at an unconstrained new airport? So just to summarise, clearly there are challenges. This has been tried before in the UK, but failed politically. So this is really about political will. There would need to be a clear policy statement addressing the future of Heathrow, changes in regulation, and approaches to surface access and environmental mitigation that would be necessary to support the development of a major new hub. There would need to be a public commitment to funding support, but clear involvement of the private sector as well. There would need to be support from airlines. But the UK is at a key decision point that will set the direction of our global connectivity for the next 60 years. There are many, many challenges to overcome, but with government and industry support, these could all be addressed. It has been done elsewhere. Thank you.